Yeah, hi everyone. My name is PK, and here I have Aaron Steele, a member of the Property Investment Accelerator, and he's just got a fantastic property. I'll read out the details real quick. It gets him net $100 a week in positive cash flow. Even with high interest rates, he bought it for $450,000. Rents conservatively for $650, so it's a 7.5% yield. Property pays for itself. He bought this in Queensland from Adelaide. So, we were just chatting earlier. It just ticks all the boxes. When he sent this to me, I was like trying to poke holes in it. I was like, why is it such good yield? There might be something wrong with it, but there wasn't. So big congratulations to you, Aaron. And guys, if you're interested in getting these types of high growth, high yielding properties, you're interested in buying Interstate, then I'm sure Aaron will drop a lot of value bombs. Welcome to the Oz Property Investment Mastery Podcast. My name's PK, and I help busy people build passive income by buying top 5% growth and cash flow property and build a portfolio using data without wasting months doing research, spending weekends at inspection or catching flights, or dropping $10,000 to $20,000 on buyer's agents every single time. So if you're confused, lack confidence, and just overwhelmed with all the information and marketing misinformation available online and don't know where to start, then this show is for you. Maybe we'll just start from the start. What got you into property? So I think you mentioned before that you already have a principal place of residence in Adelaide, which presumably has done very well over the last few years. Why? Well, okay, let's go into that as well. What got you into investing in property?
Yeah, so I guess looking all the way back, I inherited a property when I was actually a teenager, and so that was renting out, and I used to enjoy lording that over my friends at school, telling them how much I was earning every hour that they weren't, just for doing nothing. So I always enjoyed that aspect of property and how it was it was a solid I guess asset that would yield long-term growth and in cash flow. So as I got a bit older and sort of started to understand a bit more about the property market, I was always much more interested in that as opposed to, say, the other obvious example here being shares, because while shares, has got a lot more liquidity, it can fall in a heap very quickly as well if you don't make the right moves. So whereas property, if you hold on to it long enough, you'll ultimately generally will succeed in the long term. So you just got to be able to ride that wave. So we purchased this primary residence back in 2018. So it's not your typical property. It was a large sort of acreage that we then built on. And then, a few years later, well, actually, just as we moved in, the pandemic really shut everything down. So, and then we saw that crazy growth cycle during the pandemic as well. So I was able to pull equity out of the place that we're in at the moment to then, start that property portfolio again, which I've just settled or about to settle on now. So yeah, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, that's good. Good to hear. I didn't know you had an acreage. That's pretty cool. And we're talking about how you're a business analyst and you're in the mining industry. I also used to be a management consultant, and we're talking about how you used to, or actually still, go in the underground mines to kind of build rapport with people that you're working with so that you can do your job better. That's the exact same that I used to do way back when I was working for Deloitte. I guess my question to you is, from that, I can clearly tell that you're a hands-on person. You're not afraid of putting on the high vis, the helmets, all the other protective stuff, going 100 meters underground to the coalface, literally. Was it that, is that your mindset of just getting your hands dirty? Is that why you did the course instead of using a buyer's agent, or what impelled you to take a DIY approach?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, absolutely. The DIY approach has always been my remit, and I generally trust my own knowledge that I've developed over just what someone's told me without any kind of necessarily evidence that they can back it up with. So I much prefer to make my own wrong decisions than make wrong decisions that someone else has told me to do. So I think what really triggered this whole aspect of, because I was originally going to go with a buyer's agent. I had a few weeks off halfway through the year, and I was really into, I had completely time off from work and everything. So I was like, okay, well, I really want to start focusing on building an investment portfolio. I don't want to do that the wrong way. I want to make sure that I make right decisions. So I will trust the people that have put a lot of content, like they're buyers agents. Obviously, they put a lot of content out on YouTube about how to where to buy and that sort of thing, but also the process they go through, which there's a bit of a mystique element to it as well. Like, they don't give you too much information about what it is they actually do, but I'm usually willing to pay for value. So I was looking at using one of those, but then I don't even know how, stumbled across this guy called PK, who I was like, oh, don't use a buyer's agent. I'll teach you how to do it myself. And I was like, well, that's definitely what I'm after. Like, I've got the interest and especially with the data focus, coming from that sort of background myself. Like, if I showed you the things I've used to make this purchase, it's just loads of spreadsheets, really. And so that's that really resonated with me. And then actually having taken the course after a bit of back and forth with some of the members that I knew that were on there, who Rocco, who we mentioned before, he said, oh, why haven't you bought it yet? So I'm like, oh, I'm just sort of still umming and ahhing about it. But eventually took the plunge and went. Really appreciated the detail that you put into not just here's what metrics to follow, but why that makes sense. And then you don't say here's the suburbs you should invest in. It's like, here's the tools that you use to actually make your own decisions, which is absolutely with speaking my language. So that's essentially how I got here. I didn't really interact with anyone in the group, or I didn't join any of the mentoring calls or anything like that. I was a bit of a dark horse and just sort of popped up one day and said, hey, I bought a property. So,
You did come out of the blue, I must say, because you didn't really. I don't want to say you were an easy client because you didn't ask questions. I actually want people to ask questions, but I was like, oh, what happened to that? I think I was going to ask Rocco one time, what happened to Aaron? Like, has he bought properties? But it's really cool. Like, I honestly find it really cool, and like it's a real kind of I don't know if honor is the right word, but like when people like you are clearly intelligent and very analytical and do their due diligence when they actually do decide to do the course. Like, it's a big sort of vote of confidence in the course. And then to hear people like you say, oh, actually, I think you messaged me on LinkedIn, like, after you started the course, like, oh, this is actually like legit. I was, that kind of is like, it really means a lot. And of course it means nothing until you actually get results, but it still means, it still means a lot. So I really appreciate it. I suppose like one thing that I always hear from people is like, I don't want to use a buyer's agent because I can't verify their deals. On the other hand, or the other school of thought is like, I'll never know enough anyway. I'll never know enough about the property market, about suburbs, about the specific property, as compared to them, because that's what they do for a living for years and years and years. I guess my question to you is like, having gone through the whole journey now, I've bought this property, like, were you able to have complete confidence that, yep, this is the best deal, this is a great deal, and no buyer's agent could have got me anything better than this, and having confidence in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I'm actually on. I've done a buyer's agency course as well, and so I'm on the group. I won't say which one, but I'm on one of the Facebook groups where they have these internal discussions, and so much of the stuff they're talking about is just crap. It's like, it's not like they're not making database decisions at all. It's all about the the marketing fluff around how to get clients, which is an aspect of it, sure, but the actual database decision making I just wasn't seeing there. So and I did as much due diligence as I possibly could, and at the end of the day, when the numbers stack up, they stack up. There's not really there's not really any kind of factors that you haven't really covered. So in the course, so I was pretty confident that there wasn't anything I was missing. I wasn't any unexpected surprises. It was all very clearly laid out, and I just sort of lined them up and then just executed.
Yeah.
It was funny. A lot of the agents I spoke to all assumed that I was a buyer's agent. Just
Oh,
in the
really?
way, just in the way that I was conducting things very business-like and sort of straight to the point. And I'm not, I'm pretty easy to get along with over the phone, but I was very direct with, negotiating and that sort of thing. So it was, interesting that assumption was there. But no, I was like, no, I'm not a buyer's agent. I'm just doing this for my own portfolio. So yeah.
But they treat you different, right? When you come across a little bit like you know what you're doing, like with a bit of confidence, with with a bit of professionalism. I suppose like one question I have for you is like you were working um, hard in your business analyst role, and you're also going to the mines and back. How we just for everyone's benefit, like what are some top tips that you can give around these things that people typically feel that you need to do in person? For example, valuing the property, for example, negotiating with the agent, for example, getting the building and pest inspection done. All of these, like, okay, we've selected the suburb, we've selected the property based on data, tick, tick. But then there's this whole element of like, how do you actually execute?
Yeah.
How did you find that, interstate, born in Queensland from South Australia, and what are some tips that you can give to folks?
Yeah. So first thing I did was establish a good relationship with 3 property managers who I was confident in their ability and their knowledge of the area. And then it's funny, like I didn't actually get any of them to inspect any properties after all of that. But I actually got the one that I ended up buying. The agent actually walks me through with a call, like a video call, like that. But by the time I was ready to buy, it was, I knew that that deal wasn't going to last long, so I just pulled the trigger pretty much straight away. But just having a good team around you, like I'd already set up a good relationship with Emmanuel, who you've had on the channel before, and had the right structure set up in place, ready to go. I had all my insurance quotes ready to go. I knew how much that was going to be. I basically did all the legwork on a hypothetical property sort of in my own time after hours, and then would just run the numbers through it every time a property came up. And if it didn't meet the criteria, then I wouldn't go after it. But as soon as one did, it was just, it was game time, and sort of got it happening really quickly. So, and as far as doing it from Adelaide, wasn't even a factor. Like it didn't bother me at all. Like the fact that I hadn't seen it and probably will never see it, like was, purely an unemotional decision. Like, I was just looking at the numbers, and I know not everyone's like that. But yeah, having that team and that confidence that there was people around me who knew what they were doing as well, and I could sort of just rely on them, was really, helped get that over the line, I think.
Yeah. I sometimes think of this analogy. It's like, what's that fish that has like really long legs and it like kind of sits very or stands very idle in like a pond or a lake, and then as soon as it sees the right fish, the bird, sorry, who stands in the lake, and it sees the right fish, it just snap. It just
Yeah.
gets it. So that's kind of how I see property investing into states. You've selected the suburbs, like the right type of location within that suburb, and it's like, when you know that it's there, you just go for it, and then all the valuation, the negotiation, like everything just falls into place because you know exactly what you're doing. And that's where confidence, I think, comes from. You mentioned before as well that it's a little bit under market value or below comparables. How can people figure out whether a property is cheap or expensive in that suburb?
Yeah. So obviously, looking at comparables. So I mean, this one was 422. So looking at other recent sales in the last 3 to 6 months, and there was a bit of say, variance between the types of properties. Like there's different pockets within the suburb, obviously, markets within markets. So, but this particular area was very affluent, let's say, and I could tell that. And I looked at other comparables in that particular pocket, and they were way above what the asking was by quite a lot. And there was a couple of, obviously there was a few things that weren't, it wasn't a problem, but it wasn't, sort of perfect, but not anything that I was too worried about. And so that, I imagine that would affect the value a little bit, but yeah, I was, pretty confident based on the other, not just the listings, which, is not actually what property goes for, but just the actual sales as well. And I called agents around the place as well. There was a property that sold for substantially less than other market value around the place, and he explained why that was, and it was extenuating circumstances, and it was like did not reflect the typical market. But yeah, so having that, like I said, that hypothetical house in mind, and then how that stacked up, it made me pretty confident of the value of it when I made an offer.
Yeah, and that's a good point as well. I think when people are trying to figure out what they should offer for a property, don't just look at comparables in the entire suburb, because every suburb has inferior locations and superior locations, just like yours is probably the most prestigious little spot in that
Yeah,
suburb. So if you're comparing a three-bedder to, some other house halfway around the suburb, you're probably going to think, oh, this is super expensive property, whereas that's actually cheap relative to the streets around
yeah,
it. And that's why you can't use like CBA, ANZ, St. George. Everyone has their automatic valuation tools online. There you go it by postcode
yeah,
level, and often their data is really old. So you gotta do this. I mean, I don't know if someone can give me an automatic way of doing it or an automated way of doing it, but you have to do it manually. There's no other way to do it.
yeah. No, that's right.
Um, and I think like maybe one of the last questions I want to ask you as well is, you used equity from your principal place of residence to form the deposit, I think, or at least part of the
Yeah,
deposit,
the whole deposit.
the
Yeah,
whole deposit, yeah, for this property. So some people might think, all right, well, you could have just saved more money, focused on your job, and paid off your principal place of residence. Instead, you refinance that, getting more debt and buying investment property. Like, talk us through your mindset on how you're okay with that, because interest rates are rising. Yeah, I'm playing the devil's advocate here. Interest rates rising, inflation is kind of peaking, it's kind of tapering off, but it's still very high. The world is uncertain.
yeah,
How do you think about such a high risk strategy in this current environment?
yeah. So I guess when you're looking at the figures, at the moment, like, yes, I am paying more on my mortgage now because of this, but I am actually not, because the investment property is paying for it all. Like you take into account not just the all the expenses of the property itself, but also how much the equity loan is costing as well, and that's all covered. So I didn't know that that would be the case when I first took out the loan, obviously, but that's what I was aiming for. So you know, yeah, I mean, I didn't love the idea. I mean, I'm not immune to laying awake at night and wondering about how much debt I've just taken on. But it's not as though we're taking debt out to go and try and make it big at the casino. Like it's debt that is quote unquote good debt, which will eventually start paying for itself, or in my case straight away, and will then snowball into a much larger wealth acquisition asset, which you can't really get anywhere without taking on some kind of risk. And yes, I could have saved for a year or so to save up a deposit, but who knows what the market would have looked like in 12 months time, and who knows if because I'm a contractor, so while you make quite good money as a contractor, you can also have that rug pulled out from underneath you sometimes. So I'm like, well, the time to act is now, and that'll once that's all settled, then that sort of does lower the risk, and it just sort of pays for itself, and doesn't matter if our personal finances change or whatever, that's still ticking away in the background. So that's sort of how I sold it to myself, at least.
Yeah, no, fair enough. It's definitely not for everyone, but if you can find, and let's be honest, it's rare to find a property that pays for itself, including the equity component, $100 a week positive. That's not an easy thing, at least not the combination of that and growth. I mean, there's plenty of positive cash flow properties out there, but not all of them are going to grow. So on that thing, like, my last question is, I actually posted a video yesterday on YouTube, and there was one person that commented saying, PK, you always talk about markets within markets, and that's a standard property spruiker scammer thing to say. And I was like, I just kind of took me back for a second. So I thought, let me put it on you, Aaron, because you're in the mine, so to speak, and you've just bought a property. You're at the coalface. Obviously, Sydney and Melbourne, mostly Sydney, falling really hard right now, right? Like, it's going to go all the way probably down to 15-20% before it bottoms out. But I always say there's markets within markets. So from your experience, like, is this suburb and in regional Queensland, are other suburbs that were in your shortlist, perhaps in Perth and other places, were they actually growing in value while Sydney is tanking?
Yeah, they were. I mean, like, because the whole process has probably taken me, maybe 2 months from way to go when I really sort of went after it. So, and I've been keeping an eye on the value, the median value on, those places are, doing okay. So, it's encouraging to see those, I guess, more regional places that are not necessarily immune, but are not affected in the same way that some of the really big markets are. I think if you didn't know how to go about this, like I was saying to my wife the other day, like, I really don't think, had I not done this course, that I would have, and I wouldn't have even heard of this suburb, let alone be confident in its long-term and short-term prospects. So it's just a testament to how clever you've been in putting this course together. So it's definitely a huge asset that I'll be able to use to repeat, rinse and repeat, and sort of grow the portfolio.
Yeah, no, I mean, the data does the heavy lifting, right? Like, the data speaks for itself, and all credit to the data and those who use it. And like you said, we're not seeing 40% growth anymore, like gone are those days from last year, but we are seeing growth. And if you look at the cash on cash return, I mean, you didn't put any cash, so the cash on cash return is infinite. But let's say you put in $50,000-$60,000 of your own deposit, the cash on cash return that people can experience right now is still, 20, 25, 30% per annum. So, coming full circle, you talked about the share market. I mean, this is not a debate, share market versus property, but people are still making money right now in property, and that will always be the case because there's markets within markets. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. And like I said before, big congratulations. It's always really, really rewarding. Like, I know you didn't really use the mentoring so much, but I put in a lot of effort in the mentoring. So it's really awesome to see someone who kind of starts by messaging you on LinkedIn, does the course, gets a great, like, truly a great deal, and then full circle, I do this interview. So that's really cool.
Now, the mentoring is on my calendar. I just it's right at the witching hour. I'm trying to get the kids to bed, and I'm just like, all right, or maybe next week, and it just
No, good one. Congratulations, Aaron. And guys, I really appreciate, people like Aaron, because, whilst we can't gloat that we've got them 10 properties in 10 years, it's like, you got one property, that's a start. And, a start is the start of something, that something may be something worthwhile in the future. You got to start anything in life. So good on you for taking action. I know you're busy, wife and kids and everything. So you clearly carved some time away, and big ups, kudos to you, Aaron.
No, thank you. And thank you as well. It's been an experience.
All right. Thanks so much, Aaron. And thanks, everyone. Catch you later.
Thanks.